We're so glad you're here.
We believe in bringing in experts to inspire and to educate women so that they can live empowered, fulfilled, and successful lives.
When women support women, we change the world. Here we go.
You're going to love this program. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Barbara.
So, who are we talking to today?
So our guest today is such a respected attorney, a talented leader, a board member, an author, and a speaker. We are so excited to welcome Beth Alcalde today to The Recharge. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, Barbara. It's great to be here.
We're so delighted that you could join us. Thank you. I know Nancy has talked so much about you. There's so much she admires about you. Nancy, tell us more.
Sure. So what I admire, there's just so much and hard to kind of cull it down, but I really admire Beth's staunch support of women, how she finds ways to really push boundaries and advocate for women, and the intentional lengths that she goes to really just create unique pathways for their success. It's interesting as I've gotten to know Beth over the years. So she comes from a female-dominated family. She has 4 sisters. She is an identical twin, and she has another set of identical twins in her family, all female. So talk about a female family squad. So there's no surprise that she's such a strong supporter of women, which I know is such a priority, Beth, in your life, both personally and professionally. But let me tell you a little bit more about her. She's a partner in the tax and employee benefit and executive compensation practice at Ackerman LLP, where she represents Fortune 500 companies and other public and private entities, including those in the hospitality, healthcare, and higher education sectors. She's a longtime member of Ackerman's board of directors, their executive committee, and she's chaired the firm's professional development committee. And she's also served as the office managing partner of the firm's Palm Beach County offices. In 2021, Beth was recognized by Corporate Counsel magazine's Women, Influence, and Power for her innovative leadership. Welcome, Beth. We are so excited to have you here today. And if you don't mind, we're going to jump right in.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. I know when we spoke earlier this week that you don't just see yourself as an attorney. For your
Right.
clients, you really see yourself as that strategic partner, bringing that
Right.
business and those life experiences to those relationships.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. I think that it is, I don't want to say easy, but it is myopic and sort of the natural course of some lawyers' approach to life, that they are so focused on what the legal answer is,
Hmm.
what is the problem to be solved, and here is what is sort of within the parameters of from a compliance standpoint, what can be done. But what I have tried to do, again, because I have tried to sort of think about my own career through the lens of business practicalities, is I
Hmm.
try to say when I'm sitting with a client, I hear you, I understand what the issue is. Yes, of course, here are the guide rails from a legal perspective. And let's try to all think through how this slots into the larger business objectives facing the organization. What are the priorities? Let's not sort of get so wrapped up in the nuances that we lose sight of what they're ultimately after. So you're right, Nancy. I look for opportunities to think as a businesswoman, and I'm very appreciative that Ackerman has allowed me to cultivate some of those business skills through leadership positions like serving on the executive committee.
Hmm.
But I would think that is part of that because you're tenured in your career, because it must take greater confidence to really speak to that in that strategic voice, to really have the confidence to know that this is a way to help make a recommendation. It feels like it's so much easier to get just stuck in the technical aspects of the law versus really take it that next step.
Right.
That's a fair observation, Barbara. I don't think that it would be accurate for me to say that I carried myself with that sort of operational confidence from the earliest stages. But what I would say is, I think that there are moments in all lives, especially all women's lives, when even outside the place of business, there are opportunities to practice and develop skills that can fast forward that maturation process. And
Mhm.
so, by way of example, I would just note that, like so many others, there can be difficult periods. Personally in
Mhm.
folks' lives. And so, yes, having years under my belt has been helpful to the confidence, but I also think viewing personal challenges, even when they're at a younger age, as an opportunity to sort of build some of those muscles, practicality and common sense approach and relatability and how to communicate in a way that is understandable to the audience at issue, etc. A lot of those skills can be honed outside the office. And so, one particular life experience that I had that I do think really helped me to frame better the relative importance of whatever the legal issue is happened to be a critical health situation involving one of our children, specifically our middle child. And he was, sort of critically ill for an extended time and fell ill very suddenly. And it was a mysterious type situation with not a lot of answers. And what I think that, what though it was absolutely terrifying and has remained a true challenge for the years, the intervening years, and we're still dealing with the situation daily, I would reflect on the growth in hindsight that I
Mhm.
think that I got from understanding that what we do as lawyers is absolutely important. The viability of our clients could be on the line, their reputations within their industry could be on the line, and none of it actually matters at all at the end of it, right? So what I found living in ICUs for weeks on end was, why do we take ourselves so seriously sometimes? Why do we always think that
Mm.
this particular question, this legal analysis, that of course, real money and jobs are riding on the integrity and the effectiveness of the review itself and the subsequent implementation of the advice. But there are people doing things right now that are life and death, and it's none of us on this phone. Right. And so I think that when I came back from that experience, and as my family has continued to deal with some of these challenges, what that healthy dose of perspective I think has given me, and what I would invite other women to reflect on in their own lives, because we've all faced challenging situations. What can you take from that? Not to make you think that what you're doing is not important, because it is, but to invite the sort of proper prioritization of what you're doing. And to, when I walk into a boardroom and I'm presenting on a legal issue, I think that sort of humility and that
Mm.
um, the sort of practical experiences that I've gone through have given me the chance and the ability to use the right tone. I'm much more empathetic to looking at others' facial expressions and reading how what their pressure points may be. I think I've really grown a lot in that sense. So you're right, Barbara. Going back to your initial observation, I think seniority and tenure is an irreplaceable factor in building confidence among female lawyers in particular, but business women more generally. But I also think that regardless of age, regardless of where you happen to be in your career, I would challenge everyone to think about what hard earned life lessons you have and use those, cull from those something positive that you can elevate your professional performance on the back of.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
I
great.
took a lot of notes on that
Yeah,
one.
that was,
Thank
I mean,
you.
like that. I'm just taking time to digest all of
Yeah,
that.
that had
And I
that
think it,
yeah, that's great.
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, that was That was such great advice, Beth. And what I think about is, something that Barbara and I talk about all the time is focus on who and what matters most. Not that being in the boardroom and presenting doesn't matter, but to your point, all of us on this call, can bring life experiences. That was really deep, um, and such great advice. And is that some of those life experiences? Um, is that what inspires you to push these boundaries, um, and find ways to serve and to help women?
I think so. I think that the life experiences have given me the confidence to want to lead by example,
Mm,
the recognition that I have something to say and to share, and my willingness to speak of difficulties in my life from a health perspective in terms of my child, I think allows for a deeper connection with other women and sort of, I hope, encourages them. Not everyone is comfortable, of course,
right.
sharing so much of their personal life in a professional setting. So I don't mean to suggest that I'm hoping everyone starts oversharing as I do, but I do think that it is a symbolic gesture of whatever it is that makes a woman herself, the totality of her personality and her dreams and her attributes and her challenges and her weaknesses. All of that, I think, if younger women can see folks in position of power being open to and honest with their colleagues and their clients about what they've been through and how they're continuing to evolve, I
Mhm,
just think it sort of serves as a reinforcement and can help so many other women.
mhm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, sometimes we're just trying to posture and present ourselves to be strong, especially when we're in a challenging environment or a very competitive environment. You don't want to look weak. And some of those environments haven't been, safe
Right.
to show that side of yourself. I think that is improving. Maybe with more Brene Browns of the world, where we talk about vulnerability,
Vulnerability. Yes.
That's
and
right.
we realize that can be a superpower and not to be feared, right?
I completely agree. I'm big on, for years in the legal community, there was this sort of joke, but a little too close to reality to truly be acknowledged as a joke, which was if you were out of the office for some reason, sometimes you would hear, senior people advocating that if you're going to be out of the office, sort of turn on your computer monitor, leave your jacket on the back of the chair as if you've run out for coffee, because God forbid anyone think that you're anywhere other than
Work.
here.
Yeah.
This necessarily must be the center of the universe just because it happens to be someone else's at that moment. And so I always say, when my even the most junior associates hear me on a conference call, if the client says, "Are you available at whatever time?" What you won't hear from me is a fabricated excuse. If in fact I'm not available, of course, if I'm available, I'll tell you this. But what I'm speaking to is if there is a child related thing or a personal trip that I am taking with my sisters or what have you, that in fact will be the stated reason that I am unavailable for the call. And I am trying to model that in front of the most junior lawyers to sort of show that, again, this is nothing to be ashamed
Hide and
of.
ashamed of,
Right.
right?
I commit 100% to the practice of law and to this law firm and to my job, and I do a good job, and I sleep well at night knowing that. And if I'm on a sister's weekend and we can just as easily push the client call one day ahead or behind. That is what you will hear from me, and I think that it sort of helps build personal relationships with the folks on the other end of the line as well. Because guess what? They are on sister trips sometimes too, and they
Right.
now want to share the details with me. Right?
I
So
love
sort
that.
of
Yeah,
opening
that's great.
yourself up is it just increases the connection.
Yeah, in our 24/7 access world, you've got to set those boundaries, right?
Right.
Gosh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
So, what are your biggest challenges that you find that you face?
So I think, like so many women, juggling everything at once is a challenge that I have faced at different points in my life in different ways. And I think that sometimes there is a feeling or a desire. We're such overachieving types, and we want to be the room moms, and we want to be leading the executive committee conversations, and we do not want to miss a single client call. And all of a sudden, you get into this feedback loop where you quickly realize that there, in fact, are 24 hours in the day, and you cannot be all things to all people. And so, to try to address that, and I don't mean to suggest that I'm there, but one approach that I've tried to use is when I find that there is I am called to do too many things at the same time. Something's got to give. I have grown to give myself the space to sort of pause and use that very inherently stressful and pressure cooking type situation. I've tried to use that as an opportunity to sort of pause and think creatively. And I think that
mm,
some of my most creative solutions, some of them are, better than others, but I think that they've come out of exactly that dynamic. I feel that my back is against the wall. I need to be in place A and B at the same time. What's going to give? And just as an example, one time, this is a few years ago, but after my son had been sick and we were sort of dealing with the reality of ongoing seizure activity with him, such that he couldn't be left alone, I was asked, I'm an author for an organization, the Employee Benefits Institute of America, and I was to be out in Seattle. I live in Florida. I was to be in Seattle for a conference that they were putting on, and it's a great opportunity to speak with the other authors and to network and to professionally develop your skills, etc. Very important obligation. And there were some other conflicts at home such that I didn't know who was going to be able to watch around the clock my child who has special needs. So suddenly it came to me, this kid happens to like baseball. And thought to myself, well, heck, it's the summertime. Seattle's beautiful in July. I wonder if the University of Washington or one of the other schools within a stone's throw of the convention center might have some sort of a day camp. Well, sure enough, the University of Washington Huskies had a baseball camp for exactly his, then middle school type age group. So I took the kid with me and we stayed in the hotel together, and I dropped him off. I rented a car, which was the only additional expense I felt because I had to stay out there anyway, right?
right.
And I dropped him off, and then I would give the counselors my number if there was an issue, and I did what I needed to do, and then he would come home, and I would go back out for dinner after he was in bed, and it ended up being the most wonderful one-on-one experience, sort of a very unique, let's go for a seafood feast on the Puget Sound, just he and
Hmm.
I never in a million years would have expected that. And he had a great baseball week, and I had a wonderful and very fulfilling professional week. And it would not have happened if I had not gotten out of my own head there
Yeah.
for a moment. I literally was losing sleep over how am I going to do this? I'm failing someone. It's not fair to my career if I miss this opportunity, but gosh, it's not fair to my family if I leave him in the lurch. And then all of a sudden, there is a solution. But if you're panicked and you're stagnant and you're overwhelmed, you cannot see that sort of a path forward. So, again, not to sort of dwell on one specific example, but hopefully it illustrates sort of the approach that I try to use. And honestly, even if I don't come out of it with a great idea, I do come out of it with a peaceful feeling and a more sort of a greater awareness that I will find a path forward.
Well, that I mean, there's such power in a pause,
Yes.
especially when you're under pressure like that. And I can't say that I think creatively when I'm under pressure, but I think that, I mean, you took the best of or came out of that situation with the best idea where it was great for your child and great for
Right.
you.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nancy. Yeah, that one worked out well.
That's awesome. And I want to go back for a moment, Beth, if you don't mind. I know that you are just passionate about mentoring women within the firm, especially emerging leaders and junior associates. And aside from, as you had mentioned earlier, showing up and being vulnerable, what are
Mhm.
some other ways that you help women find their courage, find their voice, and find their power to have greater fulfillment?
That's a great question. I think that one way that I've tried to do that is through institutionalizing associate level feedback and review processes here at my law firm. So historically, Akelman used a much sort of more fluid approach to developing associates and providing feedback and giving reviews or not. And then when I became involved with leading the Professional Development Council, I felt that having sort of an approach, admittedly, it can be tailored for individual situations and teams as appropriate. But what we did was we used benchmarks, sort of uh, maturation benchmarks by X years out, we would hope you can do in your area of practice XYZ. And in the next year or two after that, we'd like to see you layer on top of that ABC, etc. And then in the performance reviews, we asked questions in a way that picked up the actual measurable performance metrics. And what we found were talking about giving other women voices and encouraging an open dialogue and encouraging them to find their own power, whatever that looks like for them. I was amazed at the transformation. I was blessed to have been in one particular woman's review 2 years in a row. The first year was sort of the traditional Wild West version where we all sit around a conference table, like, so does anyone have anything they want to share? And there's sort of this halting kind of conversation, awkward about, here are some very generic, you have a good attitude and you're on
Right.
time all the time,
Right.
not helpful. And then some constructive feedback, which wasn't really operational in nature. I don't know what she was supposed to do with it. It was very sort of broad and sort of spoke to her general approach to probably life, but certainly to the practice of law. And I left the room thinking, how in the world is she going to improve based on that review? And how are we didn't hear one suggestion from her in that initial conversation, not one, on what we could be doing better. Fast forward to the next year, after all of these process improvements, the very same players at the very same table, I it was one of my most joyful professional moments, I think, to sort of see it wasn't a forced interaction, but to see just because of how we framed the self evaluation questions, tying them back to performance metrics and achievable benchmarks, and our own partner reviews of this associate, again, couched in a much more sort of operational
Right.
language. All of a sudden the dynamic changed. Same players, same sort of like shuffling in for the obligatory annual review, but all of a sudden we were brainstorming, oh, you haven't had exposure to this thing that we think you need to have exposure to before you would ever achieve partnership. Great. Here are the ways that I, Beth, and my colleagues are
Hmm.
going to take responsibility for getting you that exposure. Shame on us if we do not allow you the opportunity to build the skills that are necessary for advancement here. And so all of a sudden, the tenor changed, and it was much more of a problem solving type collaboration. And I think she came out of that with, yes, some areas for improvement, which she then improved because she was able to effectuate the recommendations,
Hmm.
and we were able to do better by her in that later year than we had been in the intervening period to begin with. And so again, I think I watched her find her power. She
Yeah.
was able to vocalize, and we
Wow.
were able to sort of give her the space and provide enough of a starting point that was dialed into her area of the law that she was able to sort of speak very authoritatively and help us understand what we could do better as well. And I loved seeing it, and I think that's one example of sort of celebrating another woman's power. And I
Yeah.
hope by the procedural changes that is replicated, even in rooms that I happen to not be in. That's what I pray.
Well,
That's really
yeah.
powerful. Yeah, and what I love about that is, uh, everyone wins, right? You and your
Yes.
colleagues become much more effective at giving, of mentoring, of building allyship, of coaching. She wins because there's something tangible that she can identify, but your firm wins because what a great experience, very fulfilling, and she's more effective
Right.
at doing better work.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
you. I think so
Wow.
too.
Yeah. So I have a fun question. If you ran
Okay.
the world and had supreme power, which you may already have, what is the first change you'd make?
Right. Yes, some around here would say, "Oh, this is a hypothetical or not?" Because Beth acts like she owns the place. So what would I change? Okay, so if I ran the entire world, I would ask for and model better and demand from others kindness. I
Mhm,
think, and I fall victim to this sometimes, though it's something that I consciously work on every day. This sort of sarcasm and snarkiness and sort of laughing at someone else's expense. I see far too much of that in professional
mm,
settings. And I would love to wave my magic wand and help us all be sort of, yes, of course we can, there's a time and a place for sarcasm and jokes and what have you, but I think that if most of that sort of dialogue and the banter could be rooted more in positivity and really celebrating what we see in the way of greatness in others and complimenting each other instead of sort of not mentioning anything positive, but only mentioning when you watch someone in your mind screw up. I
mhm,
just think what an amazing tsunami of positivity could
mm,
come from that if we all own that in our own universe, in our own day-to-day interactions, in the meetings that we're in. If we somehow can be more kind ourselves, and if we can find our voice to try to in an effective way, make it clear that it's not okay to be mean. It's not okay to put others down just because you think it's funny or you want to feel better about yourself by comparison. I just would imagine that that could have effects out from there. So that would be my magic wand moment. More love, more
mm.
kindness, less negativity, and less snarkiness. And especially as women, I think, we have it so within our power to model this sort of kindness. And I think it starts with us, and we should really champion that.
Yeah, I
I'll
love
give
that.
you the wand for that for
Yeah,
sure.
and I'll give you the pixie dust. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. It
Thank you.
reminds me of, my mother always said, if you don't have something kind to say, then don't say it at all, type
Mhm.
of
Right.
thing. And I
Right.
would agree with you. I think that, it does start with us. And just one quick question. So, um, outside of work, and I've met some of your sisters and know that how important your family is to you. How does Beth take care of Beth? What brings you joy outside of work? How do you exhale?
Oh, that's so nice. So I think as sort of an individual exhale. I am someone who very much finds a release through yoga and jogging and sort of having my moments in nature and that. I think beyond that, if I'm looking to be with other humans outside, but yet sort of experience the same exhale, I think that, and I don't want this to sound like find something else to occupy your time. In many respects, that's not going to be the answer to allowing for a release and sort of some feel good opportunity. But I will share that for me, some of the volunteering that I do is among the most
Mm.
personally rewarding and does sort of give me that release. And as an example of this, I would just mention I can't actually think of a day when I'm sitting at my office when I have felt happier or when I have smiled as broadly as having been told that an organization that I sit on the board of, Epilepsy Florida, and a fund that I helped to establish, the Seizure Dog Scholarship Fund, which provides money to place trained support animals with folks in the state of Florida who suffer with seizures
Mhm.
for whatever reason, to the extent that medically the dog could be helpful for safety and independence reasons. We actually awarded, for, this was, I'm recalling when we awarded the initial scholarship. And I got a call from the organization. I was at my desk at the time, and they said, you know, we did it. We found this wonderful little girl, and they shared with me her, you know, name, and they shared with me her pictures and explained the kindergarten classroom environment into which this bonded pair would be placed.
Mm.
And it was one of those moments that I
Mm.
remember thinking, you know, my cheeks flushed and I smiled and I was just so overjoyed thinking, this is what we can do in life. Like, this is, if you care about something, if you have friends who can come together and sort of try to band together for the collective good, this is what comes out of it. And so
Impact.
it's
Yeah.
not really, you're right, it's not sort of an impact on a true release and for Beth Alcalde, but it is a moment of sort of celebration in Beth Alcalde that allows for me to know that I'm walking on the right path and that other, you know, you want to leave the world a better place than you found it. And so that was sort of one of those aha moments. And I think for me, it reinforced that as I look to take care of myself, I know that just for me, it necessarily must include something like this, a component of helping those less fortunate who have similar challenges that I can really empathize with. I think that that has to be now and will continue to be, you know, as I go through my career and hopefully someday into retirement, that sort of calling and the passion that I felt in
Mm.
establishing that and making those scholarship grants, I think that that's going to be a continuous thread for me. And I think that it really is intrinsic to sort of how I view the world now.
Wow.
That is powerful. Wow. So, Beth, you are so outward focused. You're helping that organization be financially successful. You're helping women and men in your firm be more financially successful. So, let's talk about Beth. Um, what do you do? Right. So, part of having a brilliant life is making sure that you financially can support yourself, can support your family, and in meaningful ways. How have you been intentional to support and build financial strength going forward so you can live the life you want to live?
Oh, sure. Great question. And I appreciate it. I think that as I view the sort of retirement planning aspects of financial wellness, one reality is that I do sit on Ackerman's retirement plan investment committee. I'm one of the fiduciaries on that committee, and I sort of have a front row seat to, and I have very much bought into seeing how especially women in all form, can become empowered by making prudent decisions and
Mhm.
setting aside the right money. And we, as the decision makers in terms of what to share from the employer side, sort of have an obligation. So I appreciate the question very much because it is something that is intrinsic to our, benefit plan compliance practice, my fiduciary hat wearing role here. But then personally, I think beyond that, I have found that there have been moments when I have to again pause, as you can tell, sort of pausing and quieting the noise is something that I need to do to be intentional and to make my best decisions. Not that they are always the best decisions, but I truly think these are my best decisions at these points in time. I have prioritized sort of the changing and evolving family dynamics and our own ongoing vision of where we want to go in life as we make financial decisions. And so by that I mean, yes, retirement. I'm planning for that, and I want to know when I am done practicing law, what do I want to be able to do that brings me such joy, but
Hmm.
instead of just fitting it around the edges, how can I plan my finances in a way to allow that to take up as much room as I want it to take up at some unknown later time? And I also have had moments where I realize that there are intervening points when we may need to be able to have X amount ready for investments or for sort of family needs. So again, dealing with, and I know I'm speaking to many who have in multi-generational family units, there may well be someone in your life who you may have financial obligations for now or in the future. And I think sort of making some financial decisions that allow me the flexibility to be able to meet those needs, though I don't know what they are now, um, gives me a sense of confidence and peace to sort
Mhm.
of careen toward the greater unknown. And so, will my son be able to go to college and live independently? I don't know. So maybe we make sure that we buy a house that has sufficient yard to build an extra building just in case that is needed for living facilities. Will my parents be able to live on their own and not need to come? I don't know. So what if we in the garage maintain a space just in case for that? And then in terms of my own passions for charitable endeavors, making sure that along those same lines I have a very clear vision of the priorities that I want to be able to satisfy now and in the future. It really does. I think that the financial planning and the financial wellness feeds directly back into my ability to be a grounded
Hmm.
mother and wife and professional and leader and philanthropist, you name it. None of that happens if I'm in a more agitated or stressful state. And so I do think that sort of having a holistic picture of your professional trajectory and including financial goals within that for yourself will give you such peace and allow you to focus where you have the most benefit for yourself and others.
It's interesting because I think you mentioned that term peace, and that's so important to us in what we do. That in seeing people achieve that financial peace of mind is priceless.
Yeah.
But I keep
And the
coming
fulfillment, right, of the
in
Right.
why.
fulfillment,
Like,
right?
what
Right.
really ultimately
Purpose,
matters. Yeah,
right?
Right.
yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
And I keep coming back to this word that's just like resonating in my head about how intentional you are being in every aspect of your life. And pause is not something easy that comes easy to women.
Right.
So I just really admire that. And I have to tell you that I'm trying to sit with so much of what you said. I don't know if I want to weep, if I want to get up and cheer. Like I have like all of these feelings right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But so many great takeaways, Beth. I don't know, Barbara, how about you?
It I feel the same way. I feel like I'm a better mother and a better professional, just listening to
Listening.
you
Yeah.
and gaining some just insights, and also just a lot of wonderful alignment to things that I believe in. And I think you've given me the confidence to even lean into more of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying that, both of you, I really enjoyed talking about it myself, and it sort of is an opportunity for me to remind myself how fortunate I am to have friends like you and a community such as we do. This is where the magic happens. And so
Amen.
thank you
Absolutely.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, Beth,
Thank
thanks for
you.
being with us today on the Recharge. We may even come back and ask you to join us again in the future. But thanks so
Would love
much for
to.
being with us.